What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the build vlog. We are coming along with this project. If you haven't kept up with these episodes, you definitely want to check it out because we did a lot. At least in the last episode, we finished this whole top part, well, at least in terms of assembling the pieces. And now we got to do a lot of fabricating and fill in all these gaps and just make this whole shell blend together. And that's going to be a ton of work. Hopefully I can get as much of that done in this episode as possible. I probably won't videotape all of it because it'll be a little redundant, but we have a lot of work on our hands and I cannot wait for this thing just to come together. So I know where I want to go with it. So it's just about putting in the work now. So let's get to it. All right, so I've already done a little work here. I have pieces that will fill in this area somewhat anyways. And I did the same thing on the other side, which was a bit of a challenge. Because we have to keep those screw ports to make this rail work properly and everything. Because that's kind of important just to have this together so then that rail is connected well. So I don't want to give up any of these screw ports. So we're going to have to go around them, which is, you know, it's okay. It just takes a little doing. So we're making our way around there, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side to match the other side. So we're ready to lock these on, but I probably will go ahead and try to, you know, fabricate a few more parts so I can just do a lot of dev conning at the same time. We'll just go ahead. I think I'm going to try to figure this part out, which is a big part, and I'm probably going to end up doing this in, probably going to do it in ABS because it's a little stronger than this. This has enough support behind it that I feel okay with it, but over here it's a lot more of space, so I feel like I want something a little harder, and the ABS is better. It's just harder to work with. I have to cut it with a Dremel. I can cut this with scissors actually, which is really nice. You know, so it's a little bit more difficult to work with, but I think it'll be the better choice for a lot of this and up here too. Just so you're aware, I put a lot of things in the description to products and tools that I use for integrations like this integration specifically. So definitely check that out if you're interested in doing something like this. I have, you know, different types of sheet like this down there that you can use for your project. Thicknesses are kind of important. So that's kind of what dictates a lot of this, is like how thick the material is. You know, this is a little thinner than the ABS I have, so this works out better in certain areas. This is easier to work with, you know, so things like that. I mean, I also use polycarbonate sometimes to do stuff. I'll probably use that back here because I have some really thick polycarbonate, and that will, I think, work out better there. But ABS is also good. It just kind of depends on what you're doing and where you're using it. But you know, so all that stuff's down there, so definitely check that out if you're interested in doing a project like this. But let's get started. All right, so I went ahead and made a template out of thin polystyrene that's really easy to cut and shape. This will help me a lot because I'll just trace this out into the ABS, and then I can hopefully cut the ABS well. And then obviously I'll have a lot of filing and stuff to do, but that will give me the basic shape and hopefully give me the best recipe for success the first time. So on complicated shapes like this, I really do recommend doing some sort of template. This is a nice material because it's easy to cut, but it holds its shape pretty well. Yeah, hopefully this will work out well. Okay, guys, that was a lot of work. Obviously, I had to cut off this front piece because this piece actually started to kind of curve on me, and it made it basically really hard to work with. So I think I just took on a little too much. So I cut it off, and then we can just fabricate in a piece that fit in here, and then we'll just epoxy, DevCon everything together just like here. But I think that fits in there pretty nicely, but that does take a lot of work on the backside to file down. Well, most of it, I roughed it out with a sanding pad on my Dremel, which takes things off pretty quickly. It's just kind of large and hard to, control. And, Dremels tend to melt the plastic a little bit, and that is a little detrimental. So you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So then I went with the file and took off some more. It doesn't have to be pretty back there. It just needs to make sure, you just need to make sure it sits flat, obviously. So that's what we're trying to do. If it's a little high, it's not a huge deal because obviously everything's going to get sanded down again anyways. But we want it to line up as well as possible so we don't have to do too much sanding. But I think this is really close to being ready for some DevCon. I might touch up a few more things, and then we can work on the other side. Alright, so this side is set. We even drilled out the holes. Need to do some finish work on that, and I had to re-epoxy a low area here a little bit, and then I'll re-sand. And, it's rough sanded. It's not 100%, but it's definitely looking pretty good. Did that actually with a pretty cool little Black & Decker mouse power tool. Since this is perfectly flat, that made it go a lot faster. But power tools like that I don't use very often, but it was definitely nice in this situation because there was a lot of sanding being done. I just put a 220 pad on it so I wouldn't take off too much too fast. But yeah, that seemed to work out really well. But we are gonna go ahead and lock in this side that I have spent hours on, literally carving out and filing and perfecting all these pieces. Luckily, the templates were pretty darn close, so I was able to just adjust those slightly to make work here. We'll go ahead and show you what we're working with here. But I went ahead and did this in polycarb because it's a little thinner. That ABS sheet was 1/8 inch, and that was just a little thick. I probably should have used this on both sides. More or less, that's how it goes in. It's pretty tight fit, and it kind of wants to pop out, so we probably have to hold it down. But yeah, that's looking pretty darn good, and we just want to make sure that is as absolutely flat as possible because this we won't be able to get into very easily in the end because of that sharp 90 there. So making sure this fits as perfectly as possible is pretty important. So yeah, we'll definitely, that's why it took so long to get to fit perfectly, because the other side, if it was raised up a little bit, I knew I could sand it down flush. This side, a little bit on maybe these seams, but back in here, it's going to be really hard to get to. So we don't want it to really be, we want it to be as perfect as possible when we put this in place. So we'll go ahead and make sure of that and go ahead and lock it in. Okay, so that is filled in and we have sanded it down roughly. And I've put a little taper on this because I'm going to try to blend this into this diagonal here eventually. I think that'll look the best and be the cleanest. So hopefully that works out well. We'll get to that in a second, but I've been working on filling this part in. And I got some thick polycarb that I've carved like all over the place to get it to fit in here. Took some doing, but I think it's going to work out pretty well. It's going to be kind of hard to show, but we'll do our best. So it's kind of hard. I got to push this up here, but that should give us a nice clean center line there and should blend from here to there well, with probably some shaping to do after the fact. And then it should continue the line of the grip here all the way back into here, and we'll just kind of blend that afterwards, hopefully well. Yeah, I think this is going to be good, and we're about ready to lock this into place, although I need to figure out how to best go about that, but we'll figure it out.
That's good.
Well, you guys, a lot, and I mean a lot of work was done in this episode. We got most, I'm going to say most, because not quite all, but most of the stuff filled in that we needed to take care of. Still got to extend the top rail there for that Picatinny rail. I need to do a little bit more work in the front muzzle area. I'm not 100% sure exactly what I want to do there, so I'm kind of just taking my time with that. But we'll get all that done in the next episode. Definitely need to do some epoxy sculpt work, get these locked in, make the polycarb cutouts for them, which I actually purchased some thinner polycarb for that, so that should work out great. And we are going to talk about some other really exciting things that I'll get to in a second. But let me kind of go over what I did, because I know I wasn't able to show a lot of it. We've basically been sculpting with plastic. I mean, that's what we're doing here. I filled in this area really nicely, I think. Put a nice curve on it to match the existing curve there, and that worked out really well. And it just goes to show you that you don't have to use epoxy sculpt for big areas like this, and this is just a better way, in my opinion, to bond two parts like this, just using, you know, some sort of plastic sheet and then DevCon, obviously. And yeah, you can do that. And I even curved this plastic because this is polystyrene. And so you can curve it pretty easily and make it, you know, do something like that. Maybe not as easy with certain other types of plastic, but this was really nice that I was able to curve it and I didn't have to use any heat or anything for it. So that worked out really well there. Obviously, we've blended this right here into the modulus rail there, and that worked out well. I've covered up these screw holes for now because I might not need them. I thought I was going to need them, but I'm not 100% on that, so we'll see on that. I might bring back one of them just for security purposes, but we'll see. We'll see. I haven't decided that yet. What else? Oh, yeah, obviously I finished this part. I covered the part down here. You can't really see it, but I've covered that in because it was just open. So I just put a piece there, and I actually kind of curved it down here. I put a piece in there, but that didn't work out super great, and that's all going to probably get filled with epoxy sculpt. It's just a very difficult area to get in there, but I want to keep some of that shape there, so that's a work in progress there. But we also put a nice angle on this here, made that kind of extended a little bit. Looks pretty good. I really like how that turned out. And then obviously that's going to complement this angle and kind of coordinate the two shells together once again. Very important to do. Along with obviously this little curve coordinating with this somewhat, having an opening there. Instead of just a big massive hunk of plastic, we kind of broke things up a little bit, and I think that looks pretty nice. You know, you could say it gives it a mouth, you know, so, you know, you may like that, you may not, but I think it looks pretty cool and definitely gives it some unique character to it, in my opinion. What else have we done? I mean, that was a lot. I mean, it was very, very time consuming doing all this stuff. It literally took me 2 weeks of nonstop work. I mean, when I had time, obviously. And I've been working on this every single day since this competition started. So that just lets you know how much time goes into something like this. I probably have, I would say, at least 150 hours into this thing already. I mean, I haven't been keeping track, but I've been putting in several hours to possibly 10 to 12 hours on days that I have off when I have the time on this blaster. But every day I get home from work, I come in and I start cranking out several hours on this thing. So really want to get done before the end of this, you know, competition. So we're going to do our best. Oh, I did this part too. I don't think I really, I think I showed you what I was doing, but I actually shaped this really nicely with a Dremel bit and made it kind of blend and look a little nicer there. Hopefully you can see that nice little curve there. You know, we just sanded it with the Dremel and then with the file and with the sandpaper. And I think that turned out nicely. It kind of transitions nicely there now. So that should look pretty good. But yeah, this side looks pretty good too. We'll show you that. Still got to blend in this part here. We're going to blend this down into here. So that's probably going to be epoxy sculpt and maybe some flat stock of something. I haven't really figured that out yet, but that's one other thing that I still have to do. So 3 things that I still need to do there, and then there's just other little places that will need epoxy sculpt. We'll need epoxy sculpt when we put these guys on to fill them in the low areas where, you know, obviously this is flat. So down in here, there's a little bit of a gap there that we'll need to fill in, but not too many places. The other side probably has a little more. And then obviously back in here needs a little fill in. So little places like that, that's where I'm going to use epoxy sculpt. And then we need to do a lot more sanding, which we've already done a ton to get this thing finished. And I have purchased paint and it is ready to go, except we're going to be trying something new. And I bought paint to use in a paint gun. And that is a little daunting because I've had one for a while and never used it. And I think this is a good project to do it on. Obviously, I've invested a lot of time on this project. It's important to do a quality paint job. So I'm going to do a little practice, obviously, with that, and then hopefully it turns out well. But the majority of this blaster will be purple, so I feel like it's a good use of the paint gun. When you're doing just little bits here and there, and it's just not a ton of paint, it just doesn't really make sense for me to use a paint gun because you're mixing up such a small amount of paint, and you kind of have to buy that in quite big, quite a big lot of paint, a portion of paint. So it's really expensive to do that way. So, and I already have too many just half empty spray cans on hand that I haven't used. Then they usually end up going bad after a while. So, yeah, less stuff to store, the better. So, but I think this will be a cool project to try that out on. I'm gonna have to make a mini. I'm gonna have to make a mini paint booth of some sort so I can paint this properly. And I'm hoping I have good weather to do it because I can't do it indoors. Even with a paint booth, I still need to be outside somewhere, and humidity and things like that are still factor in. So, and temperature, which is all over the place here in Indiana right now. It's actually like 70 degrees today, so I need one of those days, please. But low humidity because it is not that today. But yeah, it's a challenging thing to paint here in Indiana, so I'm hoping for a good day that I have time to do that. But we are a little ways from doing that, obviously, so definitely look forward to the next episode. I'll show you guys what paint I chose, and I'm going to be testing my flywheel cage, or at least one of them, and then possibly trying to dye those other flywheels so then I can set the Eclipse cage with the Eclipse wheels up. And I'm going to try to test the Eclipse cage with the Howler wheels, and we'll see how that goes, and I'll let you guys know. But yeah, definitely stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Hopefully I can get to that next week, and we'll have another episode. So yeah, definitely stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, peace out.